Hi BookTube, I'm here with my March wrap-up. I just have a picture of my spreadsheet on my phone. The books are all over the place. Just wherever I ended up last reading them, they're there. I really should put them on the shelves, but there's not a lot of room on the shelves, to be honest. Anyways, let's just hop right into it. I'm just going to go into the order that it is on my phone here. My audiobook for this month, well, there were actually two. And the first one was Will in the World by Stephen Greenblatt. And this was an interesting look at not necessarily the life of Shakespeare, but that as well, but more so about like a lot of speculation based on what was going on around the time, evidence from his plays and poetry, and documents that we do have from, say, like his father or his wife. So, like, and his own documents too, like he was a landowner. He had a lot of properties eventually. And it was really interesting. And looking at the other people around him too, the other playwrights around him as well. And like trying to gather more about Shakespeare because we don't know a lot about him, right? So it was really interesting. There were points where I was frustrated because I was like, okay, we're not talking a lot about Shakespeare. But then I had to remind myself that the book is called Will in the World. So we're going to get just as much about the world that Shakespeare was in as much as we are going to get about William Shakespeare. So once I reorientated what I was expecting from the book, I liked it a lot more. Yeah, it was really quite interesting. If you're interested at all in Shakespeare, I suggest checking this out. Just go into it realizing that it is a lot of speculation. I think he makes that clear. Greenblatt makes that clear in his approach as well. He says, you know, this might have been the way it was. This is likely the way it was. Those kind of things. The other audiobook, I'm calling it finished. I still have about 3 hours left, but I don't want it to end, so I'm just deciding to stop listening, pretend that the story goes on forever. I will eventually finish it, and I will finish it in physical form too. And that is The Grey House by Miriam Petrasan. And I'm very much in denial that this book is coming to an end. I started it back in January on audiobook and almost immediately bought the physical copy because I knew the atmosphere of this book was amazing. It is amazing. So what's it about? It's like a boarding school, but there's not much schooling going on, to be honest. Not in like the typical sense of sitting in a classroom. And we follow, like in the first half we follow a group of boys, and in the second half girls are introduced, that are coming up to their last year at the boarding school, and they're all disabled in some way. So one boy has no arms, quite a few of them are in wheelchairs, some of them have mental disabilities as well, and one boy was put in there because he causes miracles and stuff like it's just so like. And then she takes it and she just, like, the disabilities aren't like the big thing. They just happen to be disabled characters. The big thing is that, like, there's this kind of dread and magical stuff going on, but it's not like fairies, yay, and magical powers, yay. It's more just like this kid believes he can understand the house better by eating the walls. There's like this hierarchy of, you know, leaders and gangs, and people are put into different stereotypes and stuff like that, and it's just, I can't fully describe the book. It's more of a feeling that you get when you're reading it, and I don't want to spoil anything. Like, I think you really should go in without knowing too much about it, but just it's going to be my favorite book of the year. I know that, so I'm marked it as finished, even though it's not technically finished because I don't want it to end, if that makes any sense. Okay, what else do we have on here? I could just go on and on about that book, so I'm going to shut up. Okay, The Death of Vivek Oji. I read that in physical form by Akuike Imizi. It was okay. I think it might have been better as a short story. I thought there was a lot of stuff put in there that, you know, there's one chapter completely from a different person's perspective, and I was, even at the end, I was like, why was this even put in here? Yeah, wasn't as good as Freshwater. That's for sure. That book was amazing. There's some points where I was considering DNFing, but there's this mystery of like why our character was killed, or why he died. Yeah, so that, it was okay. The Hunjin Murders, I was obsessed with this for a while. It was really interesting. It's about a man and his wife die on their wedding night, and it's about, you know, figuring out what happened. It's like a typical, you know, mystery type thing set in Japan. I believe it was written in the 1950s, I want to say. It's very straightforwardly told. There's no like flowery language, no like anything besides, you know, the murder mystery going on. And I like that in murder mysteries. Yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I want to watch the movies that are based off the series. There's only one other book, I believe, that's translated into English by Seishi Yokomizo. Seishi Yokomizo. But there's a bunch of movies out there. There's the Murder at the Big Mansion, I believe, or the Old Mansion is the one that the Hunjin Murders was translated into. I was going to say it was made into. And then there's The Adventures of the name of the detective who's escaping me right now. Yeah, the only problem I had with that book, and if you've read this, please can we like talk about it, is the motive for the murder really rubbed me the wrong way. Yeah. Okay. I read 2 graphic novels. Yeah, confirmed before I say that. I read Fables Volume 14, which I forgot I had read before. I was just kind of looking at, like, I didn't want to spoil myself completely, so I was just kind of looking at vague summaries, and it didn't sound familiar, but eventually did, and it's about the witches, and them talking about consolidating power. I can't get too much into it because it's volume 14 of this comic series. But Fables is about different characters from like fables and fairy tales and legends and all that are alive and living in our world. And it's so much more than that, but that's where it starts. And by volume 14, a whole bunch of stuff has happened. And then I read The Black Dossier by Alan Moore. I was expecting a lot more from that. It seemed to be a lot of mixed media and stuff like that in there. It's about the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but like other characters outside of that who are kind of attached to it. I guess you have to know more about the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in order to get it all. But it came with a pair of 3D glasses, so and there's a bonus. I read The Sins of Scripture by John Shelby Spong. And that was, how can I put that? If you already believe that stuff, it was a good book. A decent book. But if you didn't believe that stuff, I don't think the arguments he put forward were enough. So I'll tell you what the book's about first. It's about acknowledging the fact that there are parts in the Bible, scripture within the Bible, that have triggered a lot of hatred and bad behavior, and the historical, you know, heavy consequences within Christian history. So he talks about child abuse, he talks about the role of women, he talks about homosexuality, he talks about anti-Semitism and environmentalism, and I believe that's it. But his main argument was the Bible's not infallible. And if you're arguing with someone who believes the Bible is infallible, the arguments he was providing wouldn't make any impact or anything. It was just kind of like, yes, it's wrong to, like he just said, like, he relied a lot on common sense, like it's wrong to beat women. You know, it's wrong to abuse them. And it's wrong to hit children. You know, it's wrong to be anti-Semitic. It's wrong to be homophobic. And it was just kind of like, that's just it. So it felt like it was just a lot of fluff and a lot of the same stuff over and over again. I've read a lot of other books that were more, had better arguments, I guess is the way I'd say that. Yeah. So that was a little disappointing, but anyways. Well, I did half listen to the Iliad, and read half of it, and then switched over to an audiobook, and the audiobook was the way I should have gone in the first place. And that was a reread for me, except I didn't remember anything besides just generally what people know about the Iliad. And there was evidence that I did read it, so I was like, I don't remember why I don't remember any of this stuff. Because I like made notes and stuff. I apparently wrote an essay on Diomedes, and I didn't even remember Diomedes was a character, so what can I say there? Anyways, yeah, it's just a lot of names that are just like, at one point I just kind of skipped over a bunch of names. I was like, I'm not going to remember these names, and I can always reference this page later, so I'll just skip over all the names and get on to the action. Yeah, it's an interesting look at war, and the gods playing with people, saying, oh, I'll support this side. No, I think I'm going to go over and support this side instead. And, yeah, it's really interesting because we have these female goddesses, right? But the way that women are treated as like literal chattel in the Iliad, like just traded amongst men as like war prizes, not even acknowledging that maybe, they don't want to be your sex slave, like, but you worship these goddesses, like, I don't know, I'm sure there's lots of like academic studies on that and everything, but yeah, it was an interesting juxtaposition there. And then I read Guards by Terry Pratchett, which was great. That is the first in the Night Watch series, so we get introduced to Captain Vimes and Corporal Carrot, Nobby, and there's a few other, I'm not really good with names. And one of my new favorite characters from Discworld, Lady Rankin. She is, in the book, she's described as like this big lady. Like, she's tall, she's big, she's intimidating, she wears wigs. So I imagined her with all this big, drag queen hair and makeup, even though like she's not a drag queen, but that's how I kind of like pictured her. But she's the kindest lady. Like, she just doesn't even think twice before doing something kind, or just, she's, this dragon at one point was gonna like torture her and eat her, and they were gonna kill her, and she's like, no, like, don't kill this thing that was just trying to kill me. And I was just like, this is such like refreshing thing to read about, just someone just with oozing that kind of kindness and love. Yeah, so that was good. And then I watched The Watch, which is based off of, it's more than just the first book, and that was a really good show. It really messed a lot with gender, which was pretty cool. Yeah, and I watched it in 2 days, so it was a good show. I highly recommend you check it out. I don't think it spoils anything because it mixes so much together that, yeah, I don't think it really spoils anything. And it's really different. Like, the big overarching plot is about the dragon, which is what the Guards is from. So, but it does it in a totally different way. So I don't even think you have to read any of The Watch to get it. But yeah. Anyways, last book. It's kind of a cheat because I still have about 100 pages left, and it's April 3rd. But I'm counting it in March because I already did my wrap up in my journal, and it's counted in there, and it would be too much of a pain to go through and change everything. I overestimated how much I could read like the last 2 days of March. And that is Queen of the Damned by Anne Rice, which is the third book in her vampire series. I skipped over the Vampire Lestat. There are references to it, but I don't think you need to read it in order to read Queen of the Damned. I do think you need to read Interview with the Vampire, though, because it references that. It's like a literal book in the Queen of the Damned. Yeah, and it's about Lestat awakening the Queen of Vampires, but it also talks about the origin of vampires, and the first half of the book is actually a whole bunch of different perspectives and stories that don't seem interlinked at all, except the fact that they're all having the same dream about redheaded twins. And then the second half of the book brings it all together, and we learn more about the redheaded twins and more about the queen, Akasha. And as soon as I'm done that, I'm watching the movie again, because that's the reason I picked it up. Yeah, I think that's it. I felt like I read so much in March. Like, there were days when I was doing nothing but reading. Oh, I should talk about House of Chains too, because I read a lot of that in March, but there's still like 400 pages. It's such a long book. And it demands a lot of you, like it demands a lot of attention. So it's not just something I did just pick up willy-nilly and, you know, not have to be fully awake to understand everything that's going on. No, you have to, I feel like I have to pay attention to everything that's going on in the Malazan books. So that I'll be carrying over into April. I also want to talk here about a book that I read a lot of, but I decided ultimately to put it aside for the time being, just because I didn't think it was the right time for me to read the book. It just wasn't drawing me in at the moment, but it's not a book I'm going to DNF permanently, and that's Ceremony, which is about a man coming back from World War II with PTSD to his Lakota community, and his experience with PTSD there. Yeah, I just had to make a choice to put a book down, and I think that was the book. And I will be returning to that book eventually sometime in the future. I think that's it. That's being carried over into April. Yes. Just a word here. If you watch my April TBR, I have changed. I was going to read Ink Death, which is book 3 in the series, but it has been 13 years at least since I've read them. I thought I remembered enough, but when I was looking at the plot to Inkspell to kind of refresh myself, I don't remember it at all. So I decided to read Inkheart again instead of Ink Death. Yeah, so that's it. Let me know what you've read in March, if you've read any of these books and your thoughts on them, and thank you for watching.